Okay, so welcome back. Now today we're going to continue our journey into Visual Basic programming language inside of Excel. And I encourage you to look at the previous videos. In the first one we gave kind of an overview and showed some of the arguably very impressive functionality of the programming, the Visual Basic programming language and integrated development environment inside of Excel, where you can write very complex software inside of Excel. You can debug it using the IDE. It's really very impressive, and we showed in the first video the functionality that's very similar to many other programming languages such as C#, and you can do Windows Forms type of user interfaces. Really very impressive functionality. So we talked about that in the first video. And in the second video, we talked about how to configure it, how to set it up, and we started doing some very basic coding to show how we can get our code in Visual Basic to interact with our spreadsheet in Excel. Because at the end of the day, when you're doing coding inside of Excel, the goal is to interact your code with a spreadsheet and to operate on the data and chart it and modify and edit the data and those kinds of things. So one of the things we mentioned in the previous video was what's shown in this slide here, that you may be familiar with other programming languages like C# or Visual Basic or Fortran or any other programming language. The big difference inside of Excel is that the goal is to interact with a spreadsheet and all of the cells. And we talked about how you're going to need to become somewhat of an expert in the additional functions and commands inside of Excel in VBA that allow you to access and modify and refer to the cells in your spreadsheet, because everything you do in Excel is pretty much based on these cells of data. And you're going to chart them and you're going to modify them and you're going to do a lot of editing of data. So you need to know how to do that in VBA and Excel so you can, write your code and access the data you need to operate on. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about some of the primary commands that you're going to need in VBA in Excel in order to reference and access the various cells in your spreadsheets. So here I've got listed some important commands that you're going to need to be very familiar with in VBA. And I've got over here, I've got a spreadsheet with just some sample data that we're going to look at. So the commands I've got listed here start out with what I think is the most important. I've mentioned it before, is the range command. The range command allows you to access either one or more cells in your spreadsheet. So, for example, if I wanted to access this A5 cell, I can do it with the range command. So, for example, if I just wanted my code to say, do something with this A5 cell, I would use a range command in VBA and say range, and in parentheses, I would add in quotes A5, okay? And then this second address is optional. So even though it says range, which kind of implies multiple cells, you can also use it for just a single cell. So if I wanted just a single cell, I'd say range, and in parentheses, quote, A5 in this case, and then end parentheses, and that's it. If I wanted to select, for example, this range of cells, I would do range, parentheses, quote, in this case A5, and the next one would be C8. So it would be A5, comma, C8, okay? That's how I can specify a specific range of cells. Now, there's other syntax you can use to do the same thing. For example, you can add a variable in your code and then reference that variable. So for example, let's say I had a variable, I set up a variable, and we'll show how to do this in a bit. Let's say I called a variable myVar and set it equal to this A5 cell. And I set another myVar equal to C8. I could put range myvar, comma, myvar1, and that would do the exact same thing. And you can mix and match. So for example, I could do a range A5, comma, myvar, right? So either works, but it's a very, very important command you're going to need so that you can reference either one or more cells in your spreadsheet. So let's say I'm at this cell A4, and I want to reference a cell that is down 2 rows and over 2 columns. The offset command allows you to do that. You don't have to specify this cell specifically. You can just say, oh, it's down 2 and over 2 from where I am now. That's the offset command. It's an offset from your present location, okay? So all you do is, in this case, you would, I want to go down 2 rows. So you would say offset parentheses 2, comma, and if I want to go over 2 columns, 2, comma, 2. And that would reference the cell that's down 2 rows and over 2 columns. Now, let's say I'm at C6 and I want to reference this cell, which is A4. Well, this is where it gets a little bit confusing maybe. Since this references rows down, if you're going to go up 2 rows, it's a negative number, okay? So if I'm here and I want to go up 2 rows, it's -2. And if from there I want to go left 2 columns, since this is number of columns to the right, it's a minus because it's to the left. So it would be -2, comma, -2, all right? So very important command to reference something, an offset from your present location. Now, let's say I'm at this cell and I want to go to or reference the last cell of data in this column. There's a keyboard shortcut in Excel where you do a control down arrow and it automatically senses the last populated cell in that column and goes there. So in this case, if I do a control down arrow on my keyboard, that is the same as this XL down. And XL down is basically an Excel function that says, from the active cell, go to the end of the populated data, but go down, okay? Now, I could also do from the A1, I could do end XL right, and I would get this. So I could go XL to right. So my VBA command would be activecell.end, parentheses, XL to right. So you choose one of these 4, depending on if you want to go down, to the right, up, or to the left, okay? It's the same as the control arrow keys, but it's a VBA command, all right? Let's say I want to select this A column, the entire column, and reformat it. So let's say I want to change it to a currency. I need to select that entire column. And I do that with this columns command. And as with the range command, I can select either a single column or a range of columns. So if I wanted to select the A column, I would do columns, parentheses, and in quotes, A, and end quotes and end colon. Or if I wanted to select the A and B columns, I would do columns, parentheses, quote, A, colon, B. And the same thing for the rows. If I wanted to select 2 rows, entire rows, I would do the rows command, the starting row and the ending row. Okay, in this case, it would be row 6, colon, row 7. All right. So again, these are very, very, very important commands. And there are more, but these are kind of the primary commands you need to get very familiar with. And as we mentioned before, keyboard shortcuts if you're in Excel, but VBA commands may not be the same as how you do it in Excel. So you need to know these specific VBA commands to do this stuff. Now, some important notes while we're here. Again, we mentioned the active cell is the cell that is selected. You can see these are the active cells. All right. And Activecell.end gives the last populated cell in whatever direction. We talked about that previously. Excel up, down, left, or right. Now, let's say I'm at this cell and I want to get the address. In this case, it's C8. I would use the Activecell.address command, and that will give the address of the selected cell. In this case, it would get C8, but actually it would give me $C $8, since that is a direct reference to the cell, okay, as it does in Excel. Now, a region. It's important that you understand what a region is. In VBA, a region is a continuous block of populated cells, okay? So this is a contiguous block of populated cells. Let's say I have another set of data in my spreadsheet separated by a few empty columns. And let's say I have one of these cells in this region selected. The difference is this region is now what's called the current region because there is a selected cell in that region. This is another region, but it's not the current region, okay? If I now select one of the cells, this becomes the current region, and this is not the current region, but it's still a region. You may have blank cells in your spreadsheet. You can get around those. My suggestion is just don't. Don't have blank cells in your spreadsheet. It's just a pain. If you can get around it, well, we may talk in future video about how to deal with blank cells, but it can really cause a lot of problems. So for example, let's say I've made these blank and I do a control down arrow, it will stop at the next blank cell. Okay, so now let's do some coding and show how to implement these commands. Now, in the previous video, I showed you how to set up the IDE and to write some simple code. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you're not familiar with this. Here I've got my spreadsheet and I've opened up my developer tab. And here's the IDE, and I've added a very simple module where we're going to write our code. And I've made a subroutine called do stuff, and it's blank right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to use commands we just talked about to interact with our spreadsheet. So the first thing, I want to select cell A3. How do I do it? So I type a range A3. And what I want to do is select. And you can see we get a IntelliSense type of thing where we can select many things that we can do with a range command. But we can copy, we can count, we can fill, we can do many things. But we just want to do a select. Okay, so here is my range A3 select. And I'll click inside the subroutine, hit the play button, and you can see over here it's selected A3. And that was just a single cell we wanted to select. Now, as I said, you can also make that into a range of cells. So to do that, I would do comma C7. Okay, and then I click in here. And there you go, it's selected the entire range from A3 to C7. Now, let's say I wanted to change some property of these cells. What I can do is, we saw that there's a lot of other functionality, but let's say I wanted to change the font. So I can do dot color equals RGB blue. So here's just an example of how I can do that. I hit the play button and now the font has changed to blue. Okay, so very useful command, this range command, because it's got a lot of stuff attached to it that you can implement. Now let's say I want to change the background of this. I can say I can use the interior dot color to RGB yellow. and click inside this, run, and you can see now I've got blue text with a yellow background. So this range command is very, very important and very, very functional to do a lot of things in a range of cells. Okay? So now let's look at defining a variable as a range. Now in VBA you would say dim my range as range. That defines the variable my range as a range variable. Okay? So now we can say set my range equals range A3 colon C7. Now, since this is an object, a range is an object. Again, we said this is object-oriented, this Visual Basic. In VBA, you need to use the set command to set an object. So we're setting this myRange object as a range with these parameters, okay? So now we have a myRange variable, and since it's a range, we can use all the methods and functions and properties associated with it, which we just saw. So we can say myRange dot, and if we want to change the color back to white, for example, we can use the interior dot color equals RGB white. Okay, so if we hit play, you can see it changes the interior or background color to white. Now we talked about how to implement what in Excel is a control down arrow or right arrow or up arrow or left arrow, which selects the last populated cell in that direction. So we said to do that we would use the Activecell end, and in this case we'll do XL down, and then we need to select that. Okay, it's important that you select it or you'll get an error. So we've got that. Now we'll hit the run, and you'll see it'll detect the last cell in the down direction. So now let's say we want to select the first blank cell in this column. So say we want to add data, we want to append data, and we want to select this this first empty cell. How would we do that? Well, we've already selected this last populated cell, so we can do Activecell.end XL down dot select. Okay, and that will give us that. Now we can use what we saw before, which is the offset. So we can do an offset from the cell down one more. So we can do offset, its number of cells down, which is 1, and to the right, which is 0. So now we can run this. Let's select this first one and then run this, and you can see it automatically selects the last populated cell with an offset of 1 down and 0 to the right. Now we also talked about regions. This is a region of contiguous populated cells. So what we can do is say Activecell.region or current region, and we can run that, and you can see it selects the entire current region. And the last one we talked about was the column and row command or commands. So let's say we want to select the entire B column. We would say columns B dot select and run that, and you can see it selects the entire column, and same thing for the rows. Okay, so in the next video I think we're going to get into developing a Visual Basic application like this in Excel, where we chart some calculated sign values, and we're going to have a Windows form type of interface where you can change values and plot, and that will give us a good feel for some of the functionality in Visual Basic in Excel and how to do some of these specific things. So Anyway, I hope that helps. If you like any of these, please hit the like button and subscribe. And most of all, tell folks about it. If you think other people will be interested, let people know that we're here. Otherwise, nobody will watch the video. So thank you very much. Take care and have a good day. Thanks.